If you have a Lexus RX, in this case an RX 400h, and there's a hammering sound coming from the back, it could well be something as simple as the handbrake or parking brake. It's a foot operated parking brake sticking on. This is the offending brake cable, parking brake cable. It's the right hand one, there's two. The right hand one is longer of the two, so it's more likely to have a problem. This is the front of the cable where it engages with the pedal that operates the parking brake. There's an aluminium lug that secures the outer. At the back there's another aluminium lug which secures the outer, and the inner would ordinarily have a nipple on, except I cut it off to get it out of the car. The parking brake actuates shoes inside a drum brake. The drum brake is inside the hub of the disc brake, which is operated hydraulically. So the parking brake and the conventional foot operated brake of the car is completely separate, so they're unrelated. Some cars they're not. Some cars they are the disc brake operates as the handbrake or parking brake as well. This isn't the case with the Lexus. I believe some BMWs are similar. Anyway, the problem was caused by the seized cable. I had to remove the cable, replace it, and at the same time I changed the back plates for both back brakes. I'm changing the handbrake cable on the right hand side of my Lexus RX 400h, and at the same time I'm replacing the brake back plates. Okay, now this is the one that was on the car, and the one on it, as you see, some of it's fallen off, some of it's as thin as lace, really. It's dreadful. And the other side is even worse, so this had to be done. There is a stub axle. Obviously it's got a CV type joint on it. You have to release the nut, release the four fasteners that, after you've taken, obviously you take all the handbrake shoes off, you take the disc off, take the caliper off, handbrake shoe assembly off, which is mounted mostly to the back plate. Remove the CV joint. There's a nut on there which is about 30mm, and then release the four 17mm head bolts that hold the sub-axle assembly to the bottom of the suspension strut, which sandwiches this in between. Now, I went to Lexus, Toyota, Lexus, whatever, and I inquired as to the price of and availability of these, and they are £395 each plus VAT, plus VAT, and that's for something that's just fallen apart with rust. So if they cost 400 quid each plus, why have they fallen apart? You know, legendary Lexus, Toyota quality. Well, anyway, not in this particular instance. Anyway, this is not the genuine item. It is an aftermarket part, and delivered it was about 80 odd quid per side. So it's about £161 something, and it's come from Germany. You know, it's a bit of a no-brainer really. I mean, you could leave that on, it will still work, but it looks terrible. So I want to do a proper job, and I wanted to change these. So there we are. I've got one side off. It was a bit of a fight, have to say, but we're getting there. It's apart, and now it's just a question of cleaning up and reassembly. That was a bit rusty, a bit crusty, and I've given it a bit of a wire brush, and I blow out some compressed air, and it looks a lot better now. So anyway, so far so good. I've successfully reassembled the brake backplate assembly to the hub, which I had a bit of a job to get the old one off, to be honest, because it's pretty much an interference fit and it was corroded on. So anyway, the new handbrake cable is in place, that's fitted. The fixings for the handbrake cable are pretty resistant to removal. so needed a bit of a judicious application of heat from a blowtorch to just make sure that the nuts didn't, you know, break off or shear. Anyway, that was successful. I managed to fit it. The aftermarket brake back plates were, you know, they're aftermarket parts and they're a lot cheaper. They're probably not going to be as good. And a couple of the spot welds had not taken where this thin back plate dust shield was not fixed to the hub of the back plate properly, so I drilled through the spots and just welded them on because I didn't want to be bothering to send them back. So I drilled through and plug welded them and then painted over, so that fixed that problem, and they're nice and sound now. Anyway, I'm quite pleased with that. The previous owner had the brakes rebuilt. These are new shoes, there's a lot of new parts in there, and I think there was a bit of a misdiagnosis because if that wasn't seized up, it was on its way to seizing up. That's the problem with the handbrake cable. The new design is better in that it has a shield on it to stop water getting in the end of the cable and corroding up, because there's an aluminium lug that holds the outer of the cable at the front end with a steel inner, and of course there's a tendency for things to corrode up. Anyway, that's this side done. I have to say it wasn't a picnic, but it's done. I've reassembled the shoes. It's a fairly simple affair. The adjuster is at the bottom. It's a simple thing, you can just about see it there. The spring that holds the shoes together at the bottom also doubles up as a kind of a detent to stop the thing spinning freely. I'd advise, if you're doing this, to try and get the adjustment cock on before you put the disc stroke drum back on, because adjusting that through the little rubber, through the little hole that's left, is nigh on impossible. So it's only a parking brake at the end of the day, so as long as it does its job, that's good enough. You don't want it binding, and you want it to be effective when you apply it. So if you achieve that, that's job done. Anyway, the hardest part of the job has been done, and I'm now going to try the other side. The near side of the car, the brake backplate and hub assembly came apart a lot more easily than the right hand side. The corrosion wasn't as bad, and it wasn't, you know, on the inside of where it mates together, it wasn't as bad, and it wasn't seized together as badly. This was fairly reasonable by comparison. If the right hand side of the car had been this good, I wouldn't be saying this is a difficult job, but the right hand side it really fought me. Anyway, as you can see, it's back together, the new back plate is on, the hub is all cleaned up and copper slipped and back into place. The brake shoes are now reassembled to the new back plate, and all that remains is to refit the discs and the calipers, and the job is complete. Right, discs back on, calipers back on, everything adjusted up, everything working fine. I've cleaned up the discs and I've painted the hubs of the discs and this face here where corrosion tends to occur, to give them better appearance and to stop them corroding, which I think is always a good thing to do. Anyway, I'm fairly pleased with that as an outcome, and just needs to put the wheels back on and drop it off the jack. Thanks for watching.